Hey guys, Ogalbina here, bringing you guys our next episode of our Draft League study. Now, if you haven't seen one of these videos, as it's been a little bit since they come out and you're new here or something like that, this is basically a series in which I take a Pokemon that, either I really like or someone asked me to do, whether it be a request, so definitely leave your request down in the comments below. But I take a Pokemon and I kind of analyze it from a Draft League setting. I look at its stats, abilities, move pool, and potential roles and stuff like that it can fill on a team. So yeah, today we're going to be doing Reuniclus, one of my absolute favorite mons to use in the format. But before we get into that, I do want to mention that only a good 40 to 50% of you guys that are watching the videos each and every week as they come out are actually subscribed to the channel. So if you go ahead and hit that sub button, it greatly helps me out. It's super easy and it's absolutely free, so why not help your boy out? I really do appreciate it. We're pushing towards 400. If you can help me get there, I would definitely appreciate so. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into Reuniclus' stats. Now, Reuniclus is a pure psychic type. It has two great abilities and one, ability that exists. It's rocking out with Overcoat, Magic Guard, Regenerator. Obviously, Magic Guard and Regenerator are going to be the two main that you're going to see on this Pokemon. Magic Guard is great because it makes it where you can only be damaged by direct attacks, whether that be you can't be Toxic or Will-O-Wisp or something like that. You're not taking any residual from any kind of hazards or anything like that. Any secondary effects from a move, you're not going to be taking chip damage, and that is phenomenal in a bulky psychic where a lot of them you want to wear them down via status, via getting up hazard stack and stuff like that, like getting a couple spikes and rocks up on the field. Being able to avoid that completely versus a bulky and fat mon is ridiculously great, and just being a status absorber as well as is really valuable for your team. Regen is obviously another phenomenal ability. You see it on plenty of great Pokemon in the format, whether that be things like Torntea. Stuff of that caliber. I'm not gonna say Toxapex. I know John or some of the goons want me to say Toxapex. I'm not gonna say it. That one sucks. But Regen is a phenomenal ability, obviously restoring 130 of your maximum HP upon switch out, basically meaning you can use this as a great pivot. Coming in, throwing off a really big attack, and then pivoting out and gaining some of your health back alone. AV Regenerator is a phenomenal set that you'll see sometimes on Reuniclus in drafts, and we'll obviously get to that here in a little bit when we talk about sets and stuff like that, but kind of just a precursor. Throwing on an AV on this thing, being a great Spadef bulky pivot. Come in, take a hit, throw off a big hit yourself, and then pivot out and be able to come back in and deal out some big Damahe in future instances. Overcoat as its niche uses, I guess. Maybe if you're playing a Breloom and you really don't want anything spored, but at that point, you might as well just be safety goggles, to be completely honest. So Overcoat's not going to see very much usage at all, but it's an ability nonetheless, and if you misgen it on, you might get a benefit or two out of it. Not taking Sandstorm or Hail and stuff, but neither does Magic Guard. So there's very little instances in which you'd rather run Overcoat over Magic Guard, but still an ability nonetheless. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. Stats are very solid. You're rocking out with bulk wise, you have 110 HP, 75 defense, and 85 Spadef. Sorry, that one's darker for some reason. Incredibly bulky. The defensive and Spadef sets are already pretty solid on their own. 75 isn't the greatest defensively, but when you tack it on with a 110 HP at level 100, you're hitting a max of 424, especially without taking Hazard Chip. You are a phenomenal bulky psychic. In my mind, and in a lot of people's mind in the draft format, when you think bulky psychic, Reuniclus is the Pokemon you think of, maybe outside of Mew. Mew and Reuniclus are going to be the top two bulky psychics, in my personal opinion, in draft. Necro can definitely serve the same function just as well, in my opinion, but it's much better utilized in an offensive type of role in most weeks, in my humble opinion, at least in a draft setting. So that's obviously, pretty important there. Now, on to the offensive stats and speed. You got 65 attack, 125 special attack, and 30 speed. Now, obviously, the attack sucks and the speed sucks. Speed, it sucks, but it's not that bad, and we'll get to that, obviously. But 125, very good stat. Very powerful mon. Even uninvested, you're very strong. And if you're a max with a modest nature, you're actually hitting 383 special attack at level 100. So that is incredibly strong. This thing doesn't have to be used in that bulky psychic role. I mean, you already have phenomenal bulk as is in your HP stat, and being as slow as you are, you're often not running very much speed. So with that natural bulk, you can still live a lot of the hits you really need to, and throw off massive hits with this thing's really good special attack stat. Whether you be, we'll talk about the sets later. I want to kind of save those for the end there. 30 speed, 65 attack obviously isn't great. You do get some cool niche coverage options, which I have run before. I've run Drain Punch before. I've run, I've run Gyro Ball for a Mega DNC on EV set. I've run Rock Slide for a Volcarona on a set and stuff like that. So there's definitely plenty of options there. On the physical side, it's not great, but if you have 4 times weakness and you want to catch something, yeah, you know, there's obviously definitely options nonetheless. And the 30 speed on paper looks like that's pretty garbage, but you don't need every Pokemon to be fast. You really don't, especially a mon that's fitting this kind of role. And with access to Trick Room, which again we will talk about, that is phenomenal. You're going to be underspeeding pretty much anything your opponent wants to throw at you, and you know, potentially being a really, really good either Trick Room setter or a Trick Room breaker, or even just a Trick Room sweeper on its own. But yeah, that's going to be its stats, typings, and what do you call it, abilities. Let's go ahead and jump into some of the moves that Reuniclus has. Now for the moves, we're going to tuck off in this corner, just so I don't cover up the text and stuff like that. It's a little bit more important. We'll be back over there in a second, though. Don't you worry. But as for move-wise, we got 5 different slides here. The first one, we're going to just talk about some of the offensive coverage. The first 2, I think, are offensive coverage that it has. So obviously, you have access to Psychic and Psy Shock. Psychic being your stronger option, Psy Shock being great against especially defensive walls that you might want to break through, like a Chansey or Blissey. That's obviously very, very nice in its own right. You know, depending on what you're, you know, looking on hitting, either are very, very viable options. Psy Shock is also great for Calm Mind Wars against opposing, you know, monster trying to set up CMs in your face and stuff like that. Shadow Ball is great for opposing Psychics. It's great for super effective on a lot of ghosts that might threaten you offensively. Focus Blast is phenomenal, obviously, to hit dark types. It did previously have access to Signal Beam, which is a bit of a safer option against some of the frailer darks, but it did lose that in the generational shift when Signal Beam was snapped as a move in general. It just doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, Signal Beam is gone on Reuniclus, but it still has Focus Blast as an option to hit those Pokemon. Next up in offensive coverage, we have moves like Thunder. Thunder is honestly, I wish you got Thunderbolt, but Thunder is nice in you know, specific instances. You're playing a Corviknight, a Skarmory. I said like Carmory. I was trying to mix the two. A Celesteela, a Mandibuzz, things like that. Thunder can actually be very, very nice, provided you hit. But if you draft it with Rain, like I have, you can actually always hit them, which is actually pretty cool. Energy Ball is another niche coverage option in order to hit, you know, maybe a 4 times beat ground or something like that, just to have nice coverage. Knockoff is great utility in order to knock off opposing items, especially if you have like a AV Muck that's supposed to be your check or something like that. You can catch it on the switch while it's thinking you're, you know, oh no, don't let Reuniclus set up. You knock it off, you knock off its Berry, you knock off its AV, and that's obviously, you know, can be said for a lot of different Pokemon. And then Nightshade is another really cool option, really bulky Reuniclus sets that are trying to, you know, just chip down and get that guaranteed chip damage off on your opponent. Nightshade does, what is it, 25? It does damage equal to the user's level, so you're doing, you know, a good amount of damage, especially at level 100 and level 50. Being able to get that guaranteed chip off can be really nice in certain instances, provided the mon doesn't have more than, what is it, 100 HP? I don't remember exactly, but Nightshade is very, very solid nonetheless. Next up, we have, we're kind of jumping into more utility options, more setup options, things like that. Reuniclus does have access to Calm Mind, which is great in setup instances, especially with Recover. You can reliably recover yourself on up, so you're a threat throughout the match, which is great for a bulky Psychic. Having access to Recover is pretty much mandatory if you're going to be a fat Psychic, you know, filling that defensive role that Reuniclus really does try to fill. Trick Room is a great option. Like I said, this thing has 125 special attack, so if you can get up a Trick Room, this is a great offensive Trick Room on OTR. This thing can really punch some holes for the teams, especially if you're preparing for, you know, like a Max Fizz Death, Calm Mind, Reuniclus. You Trick Room up, they go into, I don't know, something pretty passive, like a Clefable. Because they're unaware or something like that. And you throw off a Life Orb Psychic. Another reason that Magic Guard is great, obviously protecting you from Life Orb Chip and being able to hide and conceal that item throughout the game unless your opponent calcs that damage. Throwing off a big Life Orb Psychic can be phenomenal because that often is going to be the difference between a 2-hit KO and not a 2-hit KO. And then Iron Defense is also great. Reuniclus is the reason you draft a Dark type. Reuniclus is one of the reasons you draft a Dark type because Double Dance sets with Calm Mind, Recover, Iron Defense, and either Psychic, Psyshock, or Stored Power, which we'll talk about, can be demonic. They're ridiculously hard to deal with because of the fact that you can't poison or status this thing whatsoever. It can kind of just sit there and sit in front of your team until you crit it or phase it out. So obviously Iron Defense and Calm Mind can be a bit of an issue to deal with if you do not have a Dark type on your team. So always draft one, obviously. Next up, we have some more utility options. Encore is a really nice way to catch things, trying to set up and take advantage of you being a more bulkier passive set, which is obviously really nice. Encoring something into a certain move can always be really, really beneficial. Trick is really nice. If you're like a Trick spec set and you know something like Mandibuzz is a great check to you, you can always check that, trick that thing a specs steal its item, whether it be boots or leftovers or something like that, and cripple that thing for the rest of the game, which is great. Or you can even do some cool things. Like I've seen like what do you call it? I've seen like fling sticky barb and trick sticky barb and stuff like that, like what Clefable's running in OU right now every once in a while, which is honestly really cool. Because you're obviously not taking that damage due to the magic guard, and you can trick it on over to something else. I've seen flame orb, I've seen toxic orb, a bunch of different options, which is really cool. And you're obviously stealing the item of your opponent at that point, which is obviously super dope. Store power I talked about on double dance sets can be very terrifying if you don't have a dark type on the team or a dark type left to deal with it. And then Thunder Wave is a great form of speed control, just slowing things down for the rest of your team. You're probably not going to be outspeeding much, but with the Thunder Wave support, a lot of your team's really going to appreciate that. Then lastly, some more utility moves. I actually put knock off twice, which I'm realizing now. Oops, I apologize. But knockoff is obviously great. Toxic, just because you're a fat psychic, sometimes toxic can be, obviously phenomenal. You don't need to be set up Reuniclus every week. You don't need to be AV. You don't need to be offensive trick room. You can just be like a fat psychic toxic recover focus blast set or something like that, or nightshade, or knockoff Tecton there, something like that. Definitely a very viable option. And then you do have access to dual screens. You're often not using Reuni for dual screens, but it's definitely an option nonetheless. Now, with moveset and stats and abilities and typing and all that stuff gone over, so we kind of have the gist and the feel of Reuniclus at this point in the video. We're going to jump on to kind of showcasing some replays of 3 Reuniclus sets that I think are very solid in draft and deserve a little bit of attention. Obviously there's more than just these 3, but these are going to be the 3 that I want to showcase today. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump to that. Alright, so first off, we are going to be showcasing one of my absolute most favorite sets, and that is going to be Offensive Trick Room. Now, I've brought this a couple times in the BBR this season, but the game in which it put in the absolute most work is by far my game against Patty Trills in Week 5 of the BBR, and this Pokemon went crazy. Now, Patty did have a Dark type on his team, however, his Dark type was Alolan Persian, which isn't the most sturdy resist. I believe from a Life Orb, Reuniclus, it took about 80% from a Focus Blast if it was Choppleberry, which is absolutely insane how much that does, because Alolan Persian isn't the bulkiest thing, especially on this left side where it's not giving the boost. And his only psychic resist was going to be Slowbro, which he actually did not end up bringing, which I thought was very interesting. So when I played against him, I noticed he did not have any psychic resist whatsoever. So early game, which we're not showing right here, I did position it very early game in order to force a ton of damage on his entire team, because he was trying to pivot around it, waste Trick Room turns, etc., stuff like that. And we got like 70% off on the Clefable. We got a ridiculous amount of damage off on, like 3 or 4 Mons on his team before he ended up picking up 1 KO, ended up having to pivot out. And because of how good that did, I realized if I could kind of position, I have my fingers in my mouth and that still. Great job, Owen. You look great in that picture. Because I realized how good it did versus him in that early game, I realized if I could position it and get a Trick Room up later in the game, I'd be phenomenal. I did have Wish support in my Clefairy this week, so I passed a Wish into it just to let my Clefairy die afterwards in order to get it back up to full, because I knew if I got this endgame position again, I would be in a phenomenal spot. So let's go ahead and look at that. We were in a position in which Patty was in with his Heliolisk, and I knew that he had Dark Pulse, but from his damage earlier, I could tell that this guarantee did not kill me. So granted, he didn't get a flinch, which would be really bad. We should be able to get up another Trick Room and just cleave through his team. As you're going to see, I do end up setting up a Trick Room, and from here, it's just time to click the Psychic button, as I definitely say in my commentary, because there is absolutely no switch-ins left this Pokemon on Patty's team whatsoever. There's no switch-ins. Next out comes our Manitan, and this was a 50-50 roll, I believe, in my favor. I mean, not in my favor. It's 50-50 roll for me to knock him out, obviously, because he likely was very little bulk or no bulk, because I do have a sub-volley, as we do just clean knock him out with a crit. Now, obviously, the crit sucked because it took away a potential roll, but what that does is it essentially seals us. And it goes to show, too. I mean, Darm isn't the bulkiest one in the world, but that's a pretty fat HP stat. The fact that I could just Oko it from full with a neutral, just stab Psychic, Life Orb boosted, obviously. But just a Psychic is ridiculous to me, as out comes Braviary, and this is the chip that we did earlier in the game with our Psychic from full. So that's obviously phenomenal. And Reuni's basically just going to come in and clean up the game completely, as Patty just doesn't have the pieces at this point. Yeah, that's the damage we did to the Clefable earlier in the game, just showing. Well, you might think that this Reuniclus is, a potentially more passive Mon because of how often you see it as super bulky Mon. we're going to be able to just pick up a clean 4 win on the back of a Trick Room Reuniclus sweep there, showing that, you know, it is definitely more than just your fat, annoying Psychic that's there to sit and stall out your opponent. So that's going to be the first replay. Let's jump on to the next. Alright, so next up, I wanted to showcase Assault Vest Reuniclus. I think this Pokemon is absolutely phenomenal. I have brought it 2 times now in the BBR this week and then the future week, so you'll obviously get to see that. And I can't really show it there. It actually put in way more work in that game, but I think it did very solid in this game nonetheless, despite it even losing its Assault Vest. But we're going to kind of show it. Assault Vest Reuniclus in this matchup, it was against Platinum Howler in week number 8 of the BBR, obviously. And Plat had a very scary team. He had Volcarona and Alakazam, which are probably 2 giant threats to my team. And Alakazam in general, we could take 2 Shadow Balls, Life Orb Shadow Balls, pretty easily with our Reuniclus spread and the Assault Vest, which I thought was very important. And we could even take like a +1 Bug Buzz with ease with our Reuniclus. And we were actually packing Rock Slide on our Reuniclus. We were able to relax, or, you know, a quiet nature, whatever it may be. To be able to do a ridiculous, I believe we did 90 min to no bulk Volcarona, which is obviously super crazy. The fact that we can knock the thing out on a roll, or at least put it in range of another hit on our team or something like that, phenomenal. And obviously when you play Volcarona, the main goal is to make it to where you don't have something that you can set up on it freely. So I think this set was really cool. We were Psychic, Shadow Ball, 4th move, Rock Slide 4th move, well, obviously. So right here, I'm going to use it as a pivot into this Rotom Mo, as it does end up throwing off a Wisp, extracting my Rude. So this was a nice just middle ground pivot, because Hydro Pump was doing nothing. As we are going to take the burn as per not being Magikarp, but that's completely fine, as I look at my opponent's team, and they just don't have switches to Psyshock. And Trick Room was up at this point, which is why I'm faster than this Rotom, so let me take advantage of that. As you see, Plat reveals the trick here, and in the game I was very interested to see this trick pop off. It does end up stealing my Assault Vest, which is actually really unfortunate. Assault Vest Reunion actually like walled the whole squad at this point in the game. But it's something we take nonetheless. We do get rid of the thing's item. We see that it was Rindo, and it's just taking our Assault Vest, so it can't actually heal up anymore, and we can kind of just, it was Focus Blast for whatever Dark type he had. I think it was Pangoro. But this is going to allow me to kind of, get off a bunch of damage with this thing. And right here, I'm going to pivot out and obviously get my regen back up. But what this is going to allow me to do, being regen and all that sort of stuff, is it's going to allow me to use it later in the game to pivot back in and, obviously be completely at full, as you can see, and still take on this Dragalge pretty well, as I am going to get a free switch in, and that means a free Psyshock, which is obviously really clutch. So it's cool to see the Regenerator, at least, somewhat come into play here. Now, obviously, this isn't the most phenomenal showcasing of Assault Vest Reuniclus and Regen Reuniclus as a whole, but it is a very solid one nonetheless. Now, if I had Rocks up, this was actually probably a KO, but unfortunately we didn't actually have Rocks this game. But this is fine. I'm just going to stay in Psyshock again. If he wants to pump, that's fine. You're going to see with our Spadef investment how bulky Reuniclus is. Even without our AV, that's like barely even a 3-hit KO with Burn. So we're going to be able to pick off said Rotom and be in a pretty good spot as he goes into his Dragalge and stuff like that. So not the craziest showcasing of Assault Vest Reuniclus, but it's cool to see the coverage, and it's cool to see, use more of a pivot. And obviously we were pretty offensive in that game as well, so we're able to do a lot more damage than typically seen from a Reuniclus. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into our last replay. Now, lastly, we have a replay from our IBA run, from IBA Season 6, Week 5, which went up about, actually a month ago today is the day I'm recording this. I'm recording this on the 16th of September, Fourth Wall Breach. But this was our game against Aaron 12. Now, Aaron's team was incredibly weak to Calm Mind Reuniclus. His Dark type was an Umbreon, which we set up all over, and we can Signal Beam down, because we did have Signal Beam this game because it was a move in Gen 7. We're playing on Gen 7 Wi-Fi, obviously, as per the Manaphy and things like that. Though this is a pretty recent game, so I felt, pretty comfortable showing it. But Aaron's responses to a Reuniclus were very few and far in between. He didn't have a Volcarona, but I believe at this point it was either gone or we had, I believe it was gone at this point. So we were able to set up to a point where it couldn't really take us on very well. This Manaphy, I believe, was Assault Vest, so we set up all over it, and we can kind of just show off the rest of the game. As right here, he is going to Scald, he is going to get the burn. Obviously, that does not matter. We can kind of just recover on up. We were a little chipped at that point. It is a poisoned Manaphy too. We did get a Toxic off on it earlier, as out comes the Ditto. And at this point in the game, this is very interesting. I'm obviously post-coming this game too on my perspective, but this was a Ditto, and usually one of the benefits of having fat setup is that Ditto usually can't copy and beat you because it has to lock into one move, and especially with a Reuniclus like this, it could really never break through me in any sense of the word. So we were kind of oh no, we were Focus Blast because we didn't want to get beaten by the Regen. So we were Focus Blast, Psyshock, Calm Mind, and Recover. So we obviously didn't want to get beaten or breaking through by our own Reuniclus, so we walled this set essentially, especially if you use Scarf, which is typically what you're going to see with Reuniclus, and it only has 5 PP, so we can kind of just recover up until the end of time and be in a really, really good spot. As you're going to see, Aaron actually ends up being like a Quick Claw Ditto, but this kind of just goes to show when you don't really have much prepared for Reuniclus. Despite us getting really, really unlucky in this exchange, and him continuously, you know, clicking Calm Mind, trying to boost up with us, he is on a bit more of a timer because he only has 5 recovers. I have a million more, and he has less HP than me, so we are actually doing more damage to him. So provided we do not get crit, we should always win this exchange as long as we play our recover turns correctly and things like that. And that's pretty much essentially what is going to happen in this instance. As you see, we're pretty much boosted up mono with Aaron right here, in the sense that we can do a lot more with our Psyshock than he's doing with his. As we're going to go for a Psyshock, get like a min roll right there, by the way. That was, based on the last damage before that, that was a very, very low roll. But regardless, his Quick Claws are going to start popping, which is definitely, you know, very, very interesting. And he starts throwing off Psyshocks of his own. As I Calm on right here, that was probably not the best play. I should have recovered. It was just my safest play, and I should have played it safer against this thing. But fortunately, we are going to just barely live that and then be able to get off the clean recover, and from here we just kind of spam recover until we can start getting a little bit more chip off on him. He's going to try and Calm Mind in my face. Definitely very scary, but we're going to recover, get back to a round of, you know, a point of HP where he can't really threaten us as much, and, you know, be chilling much more, more so than we typically would be. So that's obviously really good. We're going to throw off a Psyshock, and from this range, it should be a 2-hit KO, and he should not be able to ever OHKO us. So we are in a phenomenal position. He's not 2-hit KOing us with that hit, and we are able to knock him out with the Psyshock. So from here, it's basically just showing off this thing's natural bulk. Rotom, what do you call it? Frost comes in, tries to click a super effective button, and does 2 to us as we just recover off the damage, trying to stay out of range of a crit from his other potential threats, or like a physical Mega Altaria, something of the sort, as we are just going to throw off a Psyshock, pick this thing off, not risking any more crits if we don't need to. Out comes said Altaria, takes a little bit of rocks, and then throws off a Hyper Voice, and that does like about 30 HP from a Mega Ult, which is obviously really funny to see. Clean, knock out the ult, and then we're gonna, you know, be able to pick up this dub. And this team in particular, as you can see, just on team matchup alone, Volk is obviously a great offensive pressure to this thing. Ditto shouldn't ever beat me, as you saw. Rotom shouldn't beat me unless it's Trick, so I just have to be smart about the Trick and things like that. But I knew it wasn't choice at this point in the game based on what I had seen earlier. Ult can't really break through me if I get set up, and Manaphy definitely can if it's not Tail Glow. And if we boost up before it, we should be in a pretty good spot. So this team in particular was incredibly weak to Reuni if we could position it correctly, and we ended up doing so and picking up a sweep. But yeah, that's going to be all the replays I really want to showcase today. Let's go ahead and go back to the clean, nice old start screen. Reuniclus is a phenomenal Pokemon. I absolutely love using it in draft, and I implore anybody who hasn't used it to try and pick it up with your tier 2 slot, or you know, however many points your leagues are under that, if you are doing points and things like that. It's phenomenal in a defensive role as a bulky psychic trick, those offensive fightings and things like that. It's phenomenal as a setup sweeper. It's phenomenal as a trick room setter and a trick room sweeper. It can form so many different roles and do so many different things, backed by, you know, a great move pool, great abilities, and a great stat line. This thing is absolutely amazing. It's probably in my top 10 favorite mons to use. It's definitely one of my most well-performing mons, at least on Wi-Fi. I believe, yeah, Reuniclus, I have 25 kills with Reuniclus on Wi-Fi and only 6 deaths, which is really cool. I haven't drafted it as much on Showdown, so my numbers aren't as great there. But on Wi-Fi, for sure, this thing has always gone above and beyond for me. So I definitely implore you to try it out. It's a great, great glue piece, and it's a great Pokemon overall. But yeah, that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions for future Draft League studies, if you have any Pokemon you want to see, please let me know. I do have another one that I have the graphics made for, and I'm, you know, ready to record. I have some replays set aside as well. I'm going to have a guest on that one as well, which is going to be really, really cool. So if there's a Pokemon you want to see, or there's a guest you want to see me talk about that Pokemon with, please let me know. I think that would be absolutely awesome, and it gives me, you know, direction to go with this series, because I really do enjoy making these videos. But yeah, be sure to drop a like, be sure to drop a sub. Again, helps me out, really easy, completely free. And I will see you guys in the next one. Later.